No, it's a fantastic result. I think the team worked really hard back in the factory to bring us a new floor this weekend. And I mean, considering yesterday we were a lot further off, I think it was 6 to 9 tenths off, for us to be much closer and to be on the second row, I think that's really fantastic. And for Charles, obviously, he's on the front row. And I think ultimately, my last lap wasn't perfect. I think I could have been. I think if I'd finished, it would have been second. So there's lots of positives to take out from that session. Also, I think it was the best. Been the best day operationally, and I would say, particularly through qualifying, how the team operated, just timings, the information we're getting in terms of traffic and positioning on track, I think was really the best. It was proper world class, so that's what we've been working towards.
Yeah, and is it particularly satisfying? Because you know what it's like at Ferrari, there's external pressures, a few adverse headlines. You must be pleased for Fred as well to come out. Hopefully you could have a good day tomorrow as well to put the cap on it all, but the team was drawn together in the midst of a little bit of criticism.
Yeah, I think ultimately we continue to put together and kind of block out and protect each other and block out all the noise and just keep our heads down. I think that's it's an incredible team, and we're just working. And I'm working with Fred. We're working to put all the pieces of the puzzle in the right place, but step by step. Can't be done in one go. It's like just got to keep working on it. But I'm really happy with the progress we are making.
Is this the real return of Lewis Hamilton? 4th position in Austria with Ferrari, the best day of the year according to him? But what is behind that statement? Today we are going to disassemble each layer of this surprising performance. From the first moment that Lewis Hamilton signed with Ferrari for the 2025 season, Formula One lived an emotional and technical earthquake. It was not just the movement of a superstar, it was the incarnation of the greatest change of the scenario of the last decade in sport. And yet, in the midst of this storm of adjustments, doubts and impossible expectations, signs arose. Subtle signs that something was beginning to click. Hamilton's body language outside the car ceased to be tense. His tone in the interviews became more technical, less defensive. In the briefings, he began to trust more on cross-feedback with Leclerc and engineers. In the simulator, he spent hours refining its braking style and direction balance. Everything indicated that, although the road was longer than I imagined, he had decided to travel completely. I didn't want shortcuts. I wanted to understand, adapt, dominate. Austria arrived at the right time to verify if that silent work was paying off. And the classification in the Red Bull Ring was the first public signal, unquestionable, that Ferrari's Hamilton was not a shadow of the past, but a new version under construction which began to show muscle. The history of this process is basically the very essence of Formula One. A fight not only against rivals but against the limits. And in this case, also against the wounds of leaving an empire behind to start from scratch. What happened in the Austria Grand Prix cannot be reduced to a sudden improvement of performance by Lewis Hamilton. The true engine behind that 4th place in classification was a precise, almost surgical combination between technical evolution, strategic intelligence, and for the first time in the season, a perfect operational execution by Ferrari. In a category where improvement margins are microscopic, this jump was no accident. It was the product of a chain of decisions that had been brewing long before the lights of the traffic light went out in Spielberg. Ferrari arrived in Austria with a radical update, the most ambitious of the season so far. The new soil of the SF-25 was a total reinterpretation of the aerodynamic flow of the car, with deep alterations in the deflectors, the central body, the edges of the flat background and the rear diffuser. These elements, apparently invisible to the viewer's eye, are vital to stabilize the car in medium and high-speed curves, the car heel of the car from pre-season. During the practice sessions in Austria, telemetry data began to show different patterns. Lower sliding in the rear, more load in curve inputs, and a sustained improvement in traction when leaving curves such as 6 and 7, critical points in that path. Now, these improvements do not automatically translate into speed if there is no impeccable execution of the equipment. And this was where Ferrari shone unexpectedly. Hamilton, after getting out of the car on Saturday, did not talk only about his piloting sensations. He talked about the team. He said clearly that it had been the best day operatively, an affirmation with more weight than it seems. In Formula One, the word operatively covers all the interaction between pilot, engineer, strategists, and traffic controls. It means that the communication was precise, that there was no confusion with traffic on the track, that the temperature of the tires was managed exactly, and that the box's output time was calculated to the millimeter to maximize the yield of the rubber in each phase of the classification. That level of coordination is not common in Ferrari. In fact, it has been one of its great historical weaknesses. But in Austria something changed. The climate, dry but changing, did not disturb the preparation. Cross data between Hamilton and Leclerc were used with intelligence. Riccardo Adami's voice was clear and eloquent by radio. And most importantly, Hamilton listened, executed, and trusted. That engineer, car, and pilot triangle finally worked as a coherent unit. But there is another even more revealing detail. In post-carrier interviews, Hamilton confessed that without these updates, the performance would have been further from his partner. That is, the new floor was not a panacea but a lifeguard. It allowed him to reduce the performance gap, stay in the fight, and for the first time, to show that it can be an internal threat in Maranello. The difference of just 0.127 seconds with Leclerc in Q3 is not accidental. It is the mathematical proof that something deep changed in the way Hamilton and Ferrari are beginning to understand each other. This type of progress is not loud. They do not appear on the covers. But within the paddock, they are recognized as unequivocal signs that a project begins to mature. And in the case of Hamilton, each 10th trimmed is also a statement. It is willing to transform to win, even if that means rewriting its own DNA as a pilot. In Austria, we didn't simply see a quick Hamilton. We saw an adapted, connected, involved Hamilton. And that is much more dangerous for its rivals than any figure in the timetable. What we saw in Austria should not be interpreted as a simple good isolated result for Lewis Hamilton. Its fourth position in classification is not just a figure in the table, it is a crack in the internal domain wall of Charles Leclerc in Ferrari. Until now, Leclerc has been the absolute reference point in Maranello. His knowledge of the car, symbiosis with engineers, and the emotional stability that projects have made it the pillar on which the SF-25 project has been built. However, Hamilton's performance in the Red Bull Ring sows a new narrative, that of the pilot who begins to claim a place of technical and strategic equality within the team. If this performance is maintained or even improves in the next races, the internal dynamics in Ferrari will change dramatically. It is not just about speed. This is control. In Formula One, the fastest pilot is not always the one who wins, but the one who manages to align the technical and political project of the team in his favor. Hamilton knows it. He has lived it. He has exercised it in Mercedes for almost a decade. And now, with a language that begins to sound familiar for those of Maranello, it could be starting that same process in the Scuderia. The challenge is huge. Ferrari is not an easy structure to navigate politically. Its history is full of cases where two talented pilots end up colliding more outside than inside the track. If Hamilton continues to close the gap with Leclerc, strategic decisions will no longer be automatic. Who to favor in an undercut? Who to give the first new game of tires in Q3? What pilot will be prioritized in a race where both are in a position to win? Issues that until now were clear could become ambivalent, feeding an internal tension that could benefit or destroy the team, depending on how it is handled. On the other hand, it cannot be ignored that this evolution arrives at a crucial moment of the championship. McLaren leads with authority. Red Bull, although beaten, continues to have the talent of Verstappen, which has already added 2 victories so far this year. Mercedes, with Russell and Antonelli, begins to find stability in certain paths. If Ferrari wants to be a real actor in the fight for the Builder Championship, he needs both pilots operating at the highest level. They cannot afford an imbalance as in previous years, where a single strong letter ended up being insufficient against teams that scored double every weekend. Hamilton, meanwhile, seems to understand that his future within Ferrari is defined this year. Not because of immediate results, but because of the type of influence to establish within the team. Austria was a silent statement of his potential not yet exploited. If you manage to maintain that line of technical, emotional, and tactical progression, it can become not only a contender to the title, but the axis of a deep internal transformation. And there is something else, less tangible but equally important, the psychological factor. Hamilton has begun to enjoy again. His gestures after the classification, his relaxed tone, his connection with the mechanics. Everything indicates that it is reuniting the pleasure of competing. And when a pilot of his caliber enters that mental state, becomes unpredictable, dangerous, almost unstoppable. What happened in Austria not only redefines the immediate present of Lewis Hamilton, but launches a direct warning to the rest of the grill. The British did not come to Ferrari to retire in peace, he came to recover what he feels he belongs to. The classification in the Red Bull Ring, beyond the numerical result, has worked as a window to what could be the beginning of a new competitive era for him. A stage that is not built with epic speeches or grandiloquent statements, but with technical microdetails, strategic alignments, and an increasingly deep understanding between pilot and equipment. But this situation also opens a range of legitimate doubts. Can you maintain this level? What will happen if in the next Grand Prix the conditions do not favor Ferrari, or if the improvement seen in Spielberg turns out to be more circumstantial than structural? Therefore, now I ask you directly, are you convinced that Lewis Hamilton has found the Ferrari key? Or do you think this fourth place is simply an illusion generated by a favorable track and a specific improvement? Do you think this version of Hamilton can compete from you to you with Norris or even with his own companion Leclerc? Leave me your opinion in the comments.